All right, let's try that one again.
We could put some more greens in here where the spinach was, if you want.
Okay.
So I'm going to just try that last question again, okay?
Okay.
So go ahead and do your... So why are you out here gardening today?
Oh, I'm out here gardening because the weeds are taking over my vegetable patch, and I'm depending on these vegetables to help feed me during the summer.
Okay. Does the college not pay you enough to do so?
Well, it's not very often that college can offer me any work during the summer. This summer is a little different, but the enrollment at the college goes way down during the summer months. Classes are smaller, there are fewer of them, and so most of the adjuncts find they have little or no work during the summer. So several summers ago, I found myself needing to apply for food stamps, and for a one-person household, which is what I have, for a person of my gender and age, food stamps come to, or at least at that time, were coming to about $65 a month. And I think that was the summer I decided to apply for a plot here at the community gardens, because I figured I could get a lot more vegetables out of a garden than I can for $65 a month. So I've maintained this plot for the last 3 years, and it's been a big help. This summer I do happen to have work. I am teaching one course in each of the 2 summer sessions. So in theory anyway, I could afford to buy vegetables at the grocery store, but that would mean giving up my garden plot, and I don't know that I'll have any work next summer. So I want to hang on to this plot.
Do you maintain this garden by yourself?
No, I do most of the watering and so on by myself, but I have an adult daughter who lives in the Boston area. She comes up to visit every couple of weeks, and she's here with me today, helping me mow down these weeds. It was very rainy this summer, and the weeds are really bad. There's my daughter. Her name is Hillary Emmons, and she's here helping me today. I give her part of the produce from the garden as payment, because I certainly can't afford to give her money.
Not that you need to.
She would if she could, I'm sure. What do you teach, and where do you teach?
Oh, I teach at NHTI.
Okay.
I've been teaching there for 23 years, I think it is now.
And what are they paying you for one course?
I get paid by the credit, and I think it comes out to, let's see if I can remember. I just got paid for a 3-credit course, and after 5 weeks I got paid around $2,000 for the course. And it's a 3-credit course, so you do the math. I can't do math while I'm sweating in the sun.
After 23 years, they're paying you $2,000 for a course?
Yeah, that's about the going rate here.
So you haven't seen...
with a master's degree. I have a master's degree. I did once try to figure out what I get paid by the hour by figuring up all my hours, and it's just too depressing. A student on work study here at NHTI gets paid $8 an hour, and I don't. I don't make that much. I have a master's degree. The typical student on work study only has a high school education, but that's the way it goes.
Who's responsible for this?
Pardon?
Who's responsible for this?
I really don't know how to answer that question.
Well,
the pay rates have been pretty terrible since I started 23 years ago. I haven't had a raise in, gosh, I think I've been paid at the same rate for most of the last 10 years. And I don't see much chance that it's going to go up anytime soon. And that's one of the reasons I joined the union in an effort to see if collective bargaining could change that, but so far it doesn't seem to have made any difference.
Why do you still teach here?
Why do I still teach here? Well, there are advantages to teaching as an adjunct. One advantage is that it gives me some flexible time so that I can be out here and watering and weeding. It also gives me a lot of contact with young people. It keeps me in touch with the emerging culture. Several decades separate me from most of my students, and I learn a lot from them. And I do enjoy teaching, and I think I'm reasonably skilled at it. I don't know that I'm the best teacher in the world, but I think I'm pretty far from the worst. And I enjoy teaching. I enjoy having that stake in the future of our country and our democracy. So,
What's your educational background?
I beg your pardon?
What is your educational background?
Oh, very checkered, like that of many of my students. I originally went to college straight out of high school. I went to Boston University, and I spent 4 years there and did not graduate because I wanted to learn everything. So I changed my major about as often as I changed my sheets. So I didn't get enough credits in any one thing to graduate. So then I went off and I moved to New York and I began doing theater, and I made a living at that for a number of years and enjoyed that very much, but I got tired of living out of a suitcase. So around that time I married, and for a while I didn't work at all. My daughter came along, and not long thereafter a divorce ensued, and I ended up actually on welfare. So I have some experience with living on low wages. That inspired me to return to school, and I ultimately got first I finished an undergraduate degree in human services at Southern New Hampshire University, and then I went right on and got my master's degree. And shortly after that, I became interested in journalism and made my living as a journalist for several years, freelance, and I worked on a local paper. And
I think somebody told me you used to work for the Concord Monitor.
yes, I worked for the Concord Monitor 2 or 3 different times, in fact, partly as a freelancer, then I went on staff and was the education reporter. And later on, I took a position as a community editor. And
So have you?
but somewhere along the line, I started teaching as an adjunct at a different school, as a matter of fact, and became interested in teaching. So I've been doing that since about 1990. And it is not very boring. It's sometimes maddening. It's sometimes puzzling, but it is never boring. So, and I was hired to teach writing because at that point I was doing a fair amount of journalism. And I've worked for the Concord Monitor, for the New Hampshire Times when it was still around. Did a little stringer work for Bloomberg News.
So you've been in a few unions, haven't you? You've been in the guild.
I can't remember all the other publications I've had stuff
So
in. So
have you been? So you've been in a few guilds, haven't you?
I'm sorry?
You've been in a few guilds at the new unions at the newspaper as newspaper staff, right?
I still don't know what you're saying. I should put my
No,
hearing
it's
aids
okay.
in.
You've been in more than one union, haven't you?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I was a member of Actors Equity when I was doing theater. And let's see, have I been in any other unions? At one point, I belonged to an ancillary union, not Actors Equity, but has a long string of initials, because I also, when I was an apprentice actor, I also did a lot of technical work, backstage work, with sound, with lights. And
Oh, IATSE.
pardon?
IATSE.
Yes,
Yep.
that's the one. Been a while since I was a member of that union.
I have a few friends in that union actually, who are stagecraft workers.
Yep.
So,
Even ushers belong to that union.
huh? Didn't even know that. It's a strong
right
union.
Right out of
good
BU,
union.
I worked for about a year at one of the theaters in Boston, the Colonial Theater, as part of their box office operations, selling theater parties. And I think that's when I actually joined that union, although I had previously had contact with them through doing a lot of backstage work.
So, have you personally sacrificed anything to continue teaching as an adjunct?
Well, yes. Two sacrifices that come to mind are basically income and standard of living. My daughter can probably tell you stories about short periods of time when we had no lights at home. And secondly,
You're saying that you couldn't afford power because of the...
huh?
Can you tell me more about that?
Well, sometimes there just wasn't enough income to go around, and I didn't pay my light bill and ended up with no lights until I could scrape together the money to get them turned back on. And the other issue is that official retirement age for people in my bracket is 66, and I actually took retirement before that. And so that's going to result in my having lower Social Security payments for the rest of my life. And that's the only reason I'm able to still teach, because I get Social Security now. Frankly, I don't have the energy to, I can remember semesters where I taught at 6 or 7 courses at 4 different schools, not necessarily all CCSNH schools. And there was a lot of traveling around and a lot of gas, and I was exhausted all the time and got very little sleep trying to keep up with marking papers. But at any rate, I started collecting Social Security when I was, I don't remember now, 64 maybe. And because I collect Social Security, I no longer have to teach 6 or 7 courses. And so I'm able to cut back and do a better job at the 2 or 3 courses I teach.
How do your low wages affect your personal life and affect your family?
Well, it's hard for me to say really, because over the period of years during which I've lived on that, it just has come to seem like this is what life is, this is normal. So I don't know what my life would have been if I hadn't done this. I guess maybe I have owned a house. I've never owned one. There's no possibility that I ever will. Unless I win the lottery, which would be hard for me to do because I can't afford lottery tickets. It's meant a great deal of the kinds of paperwork nobody wants to do. Periods where I've had to apply for help with heating bills or help with the electricity bills or help with food stamps. Those programs are now so structured that it takes an enormous amount of effort to apply for them and to maintain them. I don't know, frankly, how people who are homeless or really destitute manage. If you go to, for example, City Welfare here in Concord to apply for emergency food stamps while waiting for the real food stamps to come, they require you to apply in person. And if you don't happen to live in walking distance, that means gas for the car and time. and all you get is an application. It's 12 pages long. It requires getting lots of papers from other agencies. Your landlord, your bank, requires you to apply for unemployment, which you already know you can't get. So it's a waste of human work hours and human energy. And you go through all that. It takes hours of time, and you have to pay most of these agencies for copies to get, say, $25 worth of emergency food stamps.
So
It's easier to have a garden.
So in between working for the college,
I can't hear you.
so let's say you ended a class. Let's say you stopped
I need
teaching.
to see your mouth to know what you're saying.
Let's say you stopped teaching a class. You would drive. Would you have to drive over? Were you applying for food stamps as you're teaching, essentially?
No, usually you don't qualify for food stamps at that point because they'll take into account your most recent pay. You have to wait until you pretty much are out of everything and down to no money.
Okay, so you have to spend down when you're out of money while
That's
you're.
not hard to do. It's not that much to spend.
So, but essentially, you stop working, spend down, and apply for food stamps.
Yep. Or whatever other kind of assistance you might qualify for. Of course, with the recession, with so many people applying, some programs have had to cut back.